Welcome back to the Best Ball Half. John Daigle, joined today by a lot of very good friends in life. First up, none other than Pro Football Focus's Ian Hartitz, who has apparently recovered well from food poisoning a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you didn't ask first. I won't curse to start off the podcast, but it's great to be back. Third time in my life I've had to deal with that. Hopefully never again.
What food was it from this time?
It was chicken wings again, and I love chicken wings. I eat them so much, and it's just like
Was it like
who's cooking
gas
your wings,
station?
bro?
I was eating them at a fucking bar. Like I'd spend half my life, Like this is one of my favorite things to do. Go have beers and eat chicken wings, and I'm getting fucking blasted for it, guys. I can't have this.
Someone who also may be a simpleton, it's none other than Underdog's Hayden Winks. Hayden, how's everything going since Best Ball Million 3 launched on Monday?
Yeah, pretty crazy week. Trying to keep up the pace with NFL draft stuff and eventually doing fantasy football rankings. It feels like the NFL offseason never sleeps, except the rest of this month it will be sleeping for me. I'm taking the month off after this.
I will see you in a week approximately for your wedding, actually.
Danger.
Very excited about it. And also, who is joining us today, my friend TJ Hernandez, who has been doing a lot of work behind the scenes on Best Ball Mania, trying to get geared up for this tournament. TJ, how's everything been going for you?
Yeah, man, I'm inverse of Hayden. That's about all I've been doing football-wise, looking at theory stuff. So you guys are going to see me. You're going to see a fantasy analyst start his fantasy season in real time today.
It is going to be a 30-second clock. We've all done a couple drafts. This will be my first live one, at least with everyone. And we'll shoot the link out here. It's actually not going to be a link. It's just going to be first come, first serve in the live lobby. But before we do that, TJ, I want to ask you, where does your research begin? Like, no matter where we get, and I'm sure it differs a little bit from where we start picking at, but really, what's the ideal strategy we should be looking at for such a large field, top-heavy tournament?
Yeah, I mean, the things that I really wanted to see this year was the unique thing about Underdog is we've had best ball leagues around for quite some time now. Underdog with the half PPR structure with the 18 man rosters and the huge tournament structure. It's really with 2 years of data. What we saw was a lot of people really relied on that 1 year of data from the first Best Ball Mania, and we saw a lot of things change in terms of positional allocation, roster construction, and then kind of tying all that together with what I just called positional draft strategies, which are just however you break down your draft, whether it be early quarterback, zero RB, late round tight end, all those different types of things. What worked both years, and that's really what I've been digging into over these last, month or 6 weeks or so.
Hayden, like you, I know you've been doing a ton of strategy as well since it launched. What are some of your key takeaways that you've seen, maybe even some key mistakes you've seen people already be making 3 days in, as I continue making margaritas on the side over here?
Yeah, I think the big thing is because it's half PPR and because it's best ball, I think most of the strategies can work. It's about when are you using those strategies and are you actually implementing them correctly? Like, for me, I wrote a column just looking at zero RB, for example, which had an absolutely terrible season last year. But I think one of the reasons why is people are drafting too many wide receivers in those zero RB builds. So if you're just looking at like the raw zero RB data and you're saying, oh, it only had like a 9% advance rate or whatever, I think that's kind of undermining what it could look like if you only took, let's say, 6 or 7 wide receivers in a zero RB build compared to 9 or 10. So I think that it's the year-to-year data. I don't want to clump it up into too wide of boxes. I think this entire summer I'm just going to look at like individual kind of teams and like very unique niche rosters and then seeing how lucrative those types of builds are.
Ian, from a player perspective, I know you've been doing rankings at Pro Football Focus already. What are some positions that stand out, like ones to take advantage of in that they're top heavy and lose momentum as it moves along to like the second and third tier?
Is this my way of like now going to talk about superhero RB before TJ, on this I think that's been the best strategy so far in the few drafts I've done. But to Hayden's point, like what I think is going to be so helpful now is finally having everyone there is we'll see ADP somewhat stabilized, and then we'll actually know like where the cliffs are at these positions, where we want to get X amount of wide receivers or running backs in before you start having to draft guys that you don't want to draft there. So I think that's kind of what it comes down to from the strategy standpoint, because I feel like you put enough hours in, and like Hayden said, it's a year-round thing. Like we all kind of have I feel like I have a good grasp of like these players at this point. So Now it's figuring out where they fit into the ADP. Like last year, Jalen Waddle and Deontay Johnson were two guys I was huge on at their ADP. This year, right now, I'm probably going to be out on them. So never hate the player, hate the ADP. Now let's figure out what the hell the ADPs are.
With that, let's go ahead and pull it up. Again, first come, first serve. Winks will be back with us momentarily, I'm assuming. And let's jump into this 30-second clock, argue about some strategies when we see what our round is. And it looks like, there are only 2 spots here. I imagine it'll fill up rather quickly since everyone's been playing so far. TJ, have you already been diving in deep to this tournament?
Have I been, like, as far as drafting? I haven't drafted one team yet this year. This is my first draft of any type all year. Like I said, I've just been kind of diving into the theory. I've been writing up some player specific stuff, so I have been keeping an eye on ADP a little bit. So I mean, I've done enough drafts over my day where I could, get my feet under me pretty quickly. But there's always those. I think it probably takes, if you're, say you saw Best Ball Mania and you're starting right now and you plan on playing 150. I say it takes me a good 5 or 6 draft till I'm really start feeling the flow of the draft and those players that I wasn't used to drafting last year.
That's what helps get the rankings feeling good too. Like it's one thing to actually have your rankings made, and it's another one to start drafting. And it's like, hold on, fuck these rankings. Like I need to change all this right now. 23.
Bullock already showing off, saying he's in 23 teams already. I've been doing a lot of 6 teams so far. That's the leagues I prefer to play for ROI since I'm not going to win a million. But the issue I'm coming across right now, and Jennifer Eakins is a good article on it. But Ian, the way I view it, you've already done RB rankings, for instance. Like we only have 6 or 7 bell cows, right? So I've been just taking those, like 3 of them early in 6 teams, and then playing the wide receiver lottery after that.
You're right. And how about this too? Because normally 2 guys I think people would loop into that group are Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara. What the hell is going on with these legal situations? Like if we wanna be that concerned about like Saquon or James Conner or some of these guys with injuries, like maybe the ongoing legal situation should have a similar impact right now, because neither of those look good from what I can tell. And do we have a timeline on it? Because it'd sure be helpful. Because right now, if we're taking them as a top 6 or 7 running back, I mean, hell, they'd be going freaking 5, 6, who knows how many rounds later should a suspension hit.
TJ, also with your strategy, as we wait to see what pick we come up with, just so you have a chance to talk about both, whether we start at the beginning or the end, what are we really looking to do here? Let's say we start with like a top 4 pick.
Yeah.
What do we start looking to do there?
I mean, we're starting running back and seeing what it looks like coming back on the turn. I mean, I don't want to go into any draft, and I think this is where people get strategy and roster construction wrong a lot, is we do have this data on what we think is optimal and what has worked in this tournament, but we need to be fluid in our drafts, like in every draft. I'm not going into it thinking like zero RB is the perfect example. It gets the most ink because it's the most polarizing, and last year it was used by less than 2% of the field. I drafted 100-something teams. I think I had maybe 4 or 5 zero running back teams. So the point isn't to tell people what the best strategy it is. It's when you fall into the strategy, how to execute it properly.
Well, I'm glad I accidentally mentioned that, because it looks like we do have the number 2 pick. It looks like we will most likely get a running back that we like. So then it just becomes nitpicking for us between the top, most likely after JT. I don't want to ruin it for us, but most likely after JT. Ian, what about your thoughts on that next group? McCaffrey, Henry, Najee Harris, Austin Eckler.
I was just wondering, though. I mean, we going McCaffrey over Cooper Kupp? I think it's close.
I kind of views this from the lens of a DFS lens. If I'm playing 150 teams, like I'm just naturally going to get my first round guys at their ADP, right? And then after I draft 100 times, if I want to be overweight on McCaffrey and have the second pick, or overweight on Kupp, then I'll start switching it up. But for my first, 70 whatever drafts, I'm just going to let ADP dictate my early round guys, because I kind of want exposure to all of them.
So that's the way I'm kind of leaning right now too, because for instance, I guess that means that we're going McCaffrey then?
Yeah.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Because I like Stephon Diggs on equal footing as Cooper Kupp, for instance. But right now, you can get Stephon Diggs at the back end of the first round, whereas I have to have the luck of the draw with ADP to get Cooper Kupp right now. So it's like, okay, it doesn't matter about my preferential rankings. Like if I land in the top 4 picks, that's when I got to get Cooper Kupp because there are only so many times I can get him.
Yeah, and kind of like it's kind of on the same note, but the reason I think people, you can look at the articles that me or Hayden or either of you guys write about best ball strategy, and you might see that, you know, superhero or anchor RB have been the best over the last couple of years. But if you go into the draft, say I'm going to have anchor RB, and you're at the end of you have the 12th pick, and I am going to do anchor RB with my second pick with Christian McCaffrey. Now I'm starting with my Christian McCaffrey versus your Joe Mixon, and you're not going to draft another running back, you know, until the 7th round because you decided you're going to do anchor RB. My anchor RB team is way better than yours now because I started with CMC. So things like that, like you're not, just because you're doing this proper roster construction doesn't mean you're applying it correctly.
Interesting. And we'll have a choice to see which wide receiver or which running back, depends who falls back to us in that time. Ian, though, do you have, because we have a question here, even mentioning, curious where the number 2 will settle. We got a long way to August. We got many shows to do before we get to August. But do you have a clear choice of the number 2 overall pick right now? I know you mentioned stopping down for Cooper Kupp even over CMC maybe.
Well, no, that's why I was asking you guys. You know, I'm trying to figure this shit out still. So it's
open-ended.
Man, like getting Matt Ryan for Jonathan Taylor, I think just helps that potential touchdown upside so much. So I think we're pretty much settled there. But, you know, McCaffrey, he's basically the best. I think he's still number 1 all time in like PPR points per game in NFL history at running back. So that's your upside. And I always like to say, man, like if the only bad thing you can say about someone is he's going to get hurt, like you should really rethink being out on that player. So the one thing is, though, I mean, if the Panthers just could have done anything, like I'm not asking for Russell Wilson, but just a single quarterback move to make that offense better, I feel like I could lock in McCaffrey. But Cooper Kupp arguably has less target competition than last year. So I lean McCaffrey, but I do think it's close. They're in a tier.
It is frustrating to get to that tier of DJ Moore. You know, DK Metcalf's a different talent, I understand, but DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Terry McLaurin, like all these guys who are in the same position as last year of just not having the talent under center. And so thus we are yet again going to empty volume, prayer yards that aren't actually going to evolve into production. It's very frustrating.
That's why you got to get Michael Pittman all the way up there.
I love Michael Pittman. Paulson and I talked about him on today's show. That's a tease. Tight ends, TJ, any research on that as we see Mark Andrews come off suspiciously as tight end 1 at the back end, and then Travis Kelce afterwards. But either way, the second round turn essentially. Yeah,
we've seen the early round tight end strategy has been dominant in best ball, whether it's underdog or other best ball formats for, I mean, really since the inception of best ball's popularity. But that has had a lot to do with Kelce, with Kittle to an extent. Last year we saw those numbers kind of fall off for the first time, and it was one, we didn't see, you know, Kelce have a crazy dominant season. We saw guys like Waller not be they were fine, but they weren't dominant.
Just by the way,
point.
Not to cut you off, TJ, sorry. This is where we're at right now. This group of running backs and then these receivers.
I kind of like Keenan, but if we want to go superhero, that's okay. We're getting to picking 4.
What are superhero options here?
Chubb, Javonte, Barkley, Akers, or
I'd rather go wide receiver than Barkley. Fuck.
Well, we got Barkley. Okay.
All right.
That's okay.
So,
yeah, I kind of liked receiver there as well.
But we might be okay.
It's okay. It's okay. We can recover.
I would go, dude. I have Keenan wide receiver 8. I'd probably take him over both these guys. I'd have a Keenan, then Evans, then AJB out of this group.
First, what's your initial like projection on AJ off the top of your head in Philly?
I have him like wide receiver 12. It's tough to be too down on him. It's not, he's going to an offense that's, I know it. They were 32nd in, pass play rate after they changed it, but they were like 6th before in the first 6 weeks, probably somewhere in the middle. And he just, it's probably going to be a more pass heavy offense than what he was doing in Tennessee. So I think it makes sense. Hurts was playing with some of the worst wide receivers in the league. So I'm not saying he's going to be Justin Herbert, but he could be all right. I
TJ?
still go Keenan though.
My initial reaction is I'm super bullish on Philly's passing game. Like 2019 Bills bullish.
Really? Super bullish.
Super bullish.
Okay,
I moved Jalen Hurts up to QB6 today.
We will let AJ Brown expire. Why you explain super bullish? And I'm sure it's a future article, but you have to unveil it now.
I like that they have a mobile quarterback that I don't think he's going to take a crazy like skill leap like Josh Allen did a couple years ago. But one of the reasons we saw Allen take that leap, and it didn't really come to fruition, but one of the reasons I was bullish on them is because they're adding a John Brown to a Stephon Diggs, and that was kind of before John Brown fell off. When they traded for AJ, I kind of saw people saying that hurts Devontae Smith. I think it just kind of boosts their overall passing game so high that even if Jalen Hurts doesn't make this like huge leap in skill, it's a good enough wide receiver, and even if you throw Goddard in, they're just a good enough pass catching offense where you can just see one of those crazy spike touchdown rate teams with this offense. So I think they're going to be in a lot of really great scoring situations, and I like the possible outlier year from this offense, especially in a tournament like this.
And it's not like we're saying Jalen Hurts is going to be as good as Josh Allen ever.
No.
But if you look at it statistically, man, Jalen Hurts in his first 8 starts had 4 or 5 300-yard passing games. I mean, Josh Allen didn't have one until his third year. We couldn't hear the end of it. So there's a ceiling there.
For this tournament, I can see linking up Devonta Smith since his ADP continues to dip. For redraft, I will be out on Devonta Smith. I can already tell you, just because
I think that's fair.
Yeah, because it's going to cause a headache, like a Christian Watson, like so many other options where there's no way we'll ever start them correctly. But for best ball, and how much my portfolio, how big it's going to expand because they're forcing me to with 2 million and 1 million to first and second. Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah, I mean, and we're playing again. This is crazy because we've never seen a tournament of this size, and even people that have played in best ball tournaments before, I don't think we've had enough time to adjust our brains to just a redraft, how to draft, in a normal size redraft league, to where you're really not only expanding your portfolio, but just thinking of ways to be uber unique. And you're going to, if you don't have the Cooper Cup from last year, you're probably not going to have a shot at the $2 million. But things like, am I going to stack 5 players from one passing offense? You would just never do that in a regular league, and in a league like this, maybe that might be something that's viable. Just going all in on offenses, just things like that. A lot of the uniqueness is just going to come in the late rounds and taking players at different ADPs, or not reaching on guys, but taking like a cup at 2 over a CMC because you'll just have a unique roster mix. But I think people really, and this is going to be an article, but have to start thinking about how can I really make my roster unique. It
is basically a 17-week Millie Maker contest in that every week is the Millie Maker, right? There are
100%.
that many entries where you need to be lucky and perfect. But also, I'm going to talk to Hayden. He just messaged me. He said he's coming back on because when we get the schedule released next Thursday night, I'm going to move forward building teams first to win the 2 million, right? But also then if something messes up or if someone takes a player before me that I'm targeting for that specific purpose, I'm going to pivot and only target the best team through 14 weeks because you still get that million to be the regular season high scorer. And so I think those are going to be
definitely
2 different builds, and I don't mind fraying for my builds as long as I'm trying to win one of those. So
what are we using for strength of schedule though? Are we just using last year's fantasy points per game? I mean, how predictive is that in the first place?
It's not that. I think you should use Warren Sharp's because he uses an aggregate schedule, and his actually tends to be pretty accurate. He actually just wrote up an article on how it's very touty on how accurate his schedule was last year, and it was very precise, by the way. And that's what I tend to use for fantasy purposes because his strength of schedule is very good until the 4-for-4 tools kick in because I'm a company man, and then we get adjusted strength of schedule over the year.
I like it at the extremes. I'll look at maybe the top 5 and bottom 5, but I don't want to be making decisions based on this guy's the 12th best strength of schedule, this guy's 20th.
No, the extremes are the stickiest. Even if we're looking at something like fantasy points allowed type of deal, whether it's adjusted or not, those top 5 have shown to be fairly sticky, pretty much for defenses against all positions. I think one thing when you're looking at I don't even want to say strength of schedule, but schedule for this tournament. Yeah. One thing that people did last year, and it paid off because there was a lot of finals teams with Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen was on the winning roster. But looking at that playoff schedule, and specifically Week 17, even if we don't know precise strength of schedule, we have a pretty good idea of like which of those games can be shooting out. So giving those, whatever those matchups might be when the schedule comes out, a little bit of a bump on your rankings.
This is the group of wide receivers right now. We already have
over all of them.
Strong running backs. How do we feel about this group?
Yeah,
I mean Pittman feels like he's going to end up being one of my dudes this year.
Okay, fair. We'll take Pittman. No complaints whatsoever, especially because Alec Pierce complements Michael Pittman very well. Like, they do totally different things. Pittman is a target hog. Pierce
you need to add someone. It's fine.
Pierce is a big guy with nearly a 17 career average depth of target. Like, he is a deep threat that is more explosive than T.Y. Hilton at these stages of their careers. It makes so much sense.
Pascal's, with the Eagles, they had to do something. They weren't going to go in with Paris Campbell and Ashton Doolin as their other two.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Hey, who's available at quarterback? Because to TJ's point, maybe we reach just a little bit on Hurts and we go all in on the Eagles.
It's a good call.
So around this range, it would be starting the 5th round. Is it not egregious to reach for quarterbacks, whether it be to start a stack or to continue our stack?
I don't want to be reaching for a quarterback to start my stack. I'd kind of rather flip it and have my quarterback and take a 10th round guy around early. But I mean, I think what's his ADP here? Yeah, I mean, I don't think when you're at the turn and you have zero chance of getting him coming back, most likely, I don't think it's egregious here. It's a little earlier than I think the data shows us to start, but also,
I don't think these wide receivers are a slam dunk either. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
I would say Amari Cooper's target share is like the highest floor we'll get, but also when Deshaun Watson's out the first 6 games, it's not going to matter. So
I think Cooper's ADP is just going to go down when that happens. He has to get suspended first.
That's a good point too. That's actually a very good point because last year, as we saw, Underdog is so sharp. You should adjust for the ADP dips. Just keep on drafting those dips because eventually they're going to increase. It happens every single time. Remember, Jamar Chase was a 4th round pick. You just keep on buying dips. Is all you keep doing. So. That's a very good point, Ian. Like, actually, we should not be drafting Amari Cooper because he will go down.
And that kind of ties into a conversation when this tournament launched this week. A big conversation surrounding it was, should I even be drafting this early? Should we be drafting? And we have some data at 4 for 4. We saw some data come out. The ETR guys put out a really good article just saying how August is the optimal time to draft in terms of point expectation. We saw, there was a lot of upside in early season drafting last year. Again, that's very small data point. I think the takeaway is that if you are planning on drafting a significant number of teams, that maybe the ideal thing is to just kind of play it evenly where you're spreading them out somewhat evenly so you could take advantage, like what Ian mentioned, those dips or waiting for those dips with maybe a bigger weight towards your August drafts.
Can I just point out, too, that Zeke just went out pick 54. I mean, that's crazy. And you can just say you're out on him, Daigle. I know they shouldn't have paid him that amount of money.
What do you mean say? I'm the only one who was in on him last year. What are you talking about? I'm the one who started the hype in February. Stop it.
I guess you're right.
I've already done the ship chasing appearance where they created a puke video when they drafted Ezekiel Elliott because of me. I pushed the issue. So no.
RB7 overall, RB8 per game before suffering the PCL injury. It does suck that Zeke and Cordero Patterson get extra hate for unsuccessfully playing through injuries, but Derrick Henry and DeAndre Swift get hurt and they're just out, and we're like, oh, okay, whatever.
It's fair.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say since we mentioned Zeke, are you on Zeke at 47th overall instead of Pollard at 100th overall? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just not I just will never be a Pollard guy. Just for his snaps and touches, 7.5 per game when Zeke was healthy. It never matters to him. He's an expiring contract as well. They're not going to re-sign him. That's not how they view their organization. So I always worry about Pollard. I never draft.
And the reason
Just take
I brought
Madison
that
three
up.
rounds
And I
later.
love Pollard, so it's not fair to him. But
No, I just think though from a fantasy perspective, the conversation of those guys in that like 45 to 100 range on the same team are always super interesting of how you're going to handle that.
So the take I had again with Paulson today as a draft winner was Dallas's pass play rate because their team is atrocious. They are a shell of themselves from last year. They literally took
crazy.
Randy Gregory and said, "What if it's Dorrance Armstrong?" They literally took Amari Cooper and said,
They got Dante
"What if
Fowler.
what if it's James Washington and Jalen Tolbert?" Right? Like, and then they took
That's
took a Tyler Smith, who is the youngest tackle in the draft, needs to develop. FBS high and holding penalties last year, and said, "You're going to play where Connor Williams played." They're a bad team, and so that is great for us for a passing attack. So I'm very high on CeeDee Lamb as like the wide receiver 5. I love everyone else, all their counterparts as well. Bring Tolbert along, bring James Washington along, Dalton Schultz tight end 5. Yes, I'm here for that.
What's your like win-loss projection though, Daigle? I don't know about bad. I think they're like a Tony Romo Cowboy, like 8-18.
So
8-9 now.
So they have been blessed, per Warren Sharp, with the 6th easiest schedule, but also Eagles we know got better, and they have the 3rd easiest schedule. So like Cowboys shouldn't be a favorite in their division to begin with.
That fucking streak too, like going back to 03 or whatever. No repeat NFC East winner. Insane.
It's ridiculous. Okay, let's see what we have here. So we already have 2-2 with our quarterback. This is the list of wide receivers. Someone's going to get auto DeAndre Hopkins. We got to make sure it's not us really quick. And then this is the list of running backs right here. Where do we feel we are at?
I don't want these running backs. Let's
either.
go. Maybe Cooks and Thielen would be dope.
Okay. We have Cooks right here.
I like those. If we're going to set a wide receiver there, I mean, and this is where I think going into a draft with understanding of roster constructions and really studying them quite well I think helps me just making decisions on the fly, because even though we technically did we start running back or did we start running back wide receiver running back?
We started running back,
Yeah.
but we wanted to start running back wide receiver.
Right. So even if we would have started running back, wide receiver, running back, like because where we're drafting, it's still basically a superhero RB team, right? So if I'm playing in a tournament of this size and a best ball type of league, like if my top 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds don't hit, like I'm gonna have a really hard time doing well in that league anyway. So the reason I think superhero running back makes a lot of sense is because I can really just start loading up on all these other positions. So to commit capital in the 4th through 7th rounds to a 3rd running back just doesn't make sense for a build like this. And I think so many people are used to just looking at their draft board. Oh, I like this running back more than this wide receiver. That's who I'm taking. That's where the roster construction understanding really comes into play.
Do we go another quarterback? Do we go a Philly stack? Do we go wide receiver?
If I have an opportunity to stack, I'm stack. I'm lose all my money. I'll lose 150 buying stacking.
You like me treat the rules and the guides more like not a blueprint, but just like guides, right? Like you treat this like this is what you should do, but if I have this opportunity, I feel like I need to get it done.
Well, also there's the roster construction, the positional allocation. This is still one piece to the puzzle, right? We still like stacking doesn't really care necessarily about your positional allocation.
Right.
You still need to hit on the Cooper Cup last year. You still need those things to happen. So understanding portfolio management. So I think at least from a snap decision standpoint, I feel like I'm at a drafting advantage because all of that is really just second nature. I'm automatically already thinking about these when I have 2 running backs in the first basically 2 rounds again, or in the first 2 rounds. It's pretty easy for me to look over some running backs that I might like or be on the fringe about. It gives me a pretty easy pass in those situations. And then again here, like, am I going to take a tight end in the 5th or 6th round in most of my drafts? Probably not. But now I got a hell of a lot of equity in the Eagles. If they don't hit, this team's dead anyway for the most part, right? Already. So like this is the kind of things and again, I'm dead inside because of DFS and poker before that. So I love taking these gambles.
First or last, like we're not trying to finish like just a little bit above 500. So if we're gonna lose, let's lose in a flaming car wreck.
99% of fantasy football players have a 500 mindset, though. It's like they see a weak spot, they need to fill it.
That's life in general. Whereas
Sure.
again, I do think Poker helped both of us out. I think DFS helps both of us out
Yeah.
to where I don't even tilt anymore. I just don't give a shit. It doesn't matter anymore.
Just
If
our
someone saw
entire
like
life is empty.
Money's not even real, bro.
if someone saw my golf lineups like even going today, they'd be fucking disgusted. It's like, how do you play this? It's like, that's DFS. It's supposed to look disgusting.
Yeah.
So you
what
guys
does
want
it
to
say?
talk USFL now, or
No, I'm the F1 thought leader. I'm fighting Pete for that title.
oh my,
That's been my whole off season.
TJ is in the F1 streets with Sam Hoppen and Justin Freeman.
How long is the average race?
Shout out to about an hour and a half. It's the best sport to sweat of all time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That's a good time.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And they're Saturday mornings. Is that right?
Sunday mornings.
Mornings.
But the issue is those European races. You get some rough wake up times, but just stay up instead of going to bed. That's the
Yeah,
move.
fair enough. I'm always up late with the UFC shit, anyways.
Yeah.
Ian, what was the rule that came out today for USFL? Like, is this something I should be concerned about? They're making the game shorter, correct?
They already nuked the over-unders. I was kind of surprised seeing how low they were when I was doing my preview article today. But yeah, it's running clocks even after incomplete passes in the first and third quarters now. I think the issue is like because all these games are on network TV, they were having a lot of them going well over the allotted time. And then when you have one game on after another game on the same field, like they physically
That's
cannot
the
start
issue.
the other game
Yeah.
for a while. So they had to fix that to try to keep the games within the 3-hour time constraints. So not great. You know, there's certainly a lot of holes in the league so far. But
what's
it's
the
football.
what's the juice on betting that the league collapses before the season ends?
Well,
Good question.
It depends
I
if they
think
get
they make
injury.
it. I
It
think they
depends
make
if they get injury reports right or not, because that's a big scandal right now.
That was bad. Reggie,
It's pretty bad. It happened twice last week too.
We're on the
All right,
clock.
quickly though, yeah. 3 wide receivers. We have our tight end. We have 3s to a stack so far. What does strategy suggest we do from here, or do we just take the best player?
I don't hate Clyde.
All these options as well.
Clyde or Jameson or Sky,
Yeah,
maybe.
I like Gallup. You don't like Gallup right there?
I guess just bet on the ACL. He might come back to us.
Yeah.
Oh well, he probably would have come
I
back,
don't-
but nonetheless, it's fine. We got him. It's
that's
okay.
fine.
Remember,
That's a
big
good
picture
bet.
takeaways for this show because 30-second clock is hard. Big picture takeaways for everyone. That's what matters.
Clyde
I
is
think
going to catch
Clyde's
balls
going to come
this
back
year.
to us. Yeah.
That's great. Oh my
I
god.
did not come back to us.
Fuck me.
Hawkberg is definitely in the show, so he's definitely
Got us
thinking us
earlier
more.
too. Okay, at this point, yeah, I would go.
This is that group, right? But then also we have running back.
Man, Sky's already going to be top 100. I was
Yeah,
hoping it would be a little lower.
You got to give it time. People are very excited about rookies right now.
I know.
I don't think we need another running back just yet. I mean, we got McCaffrey and Barkley. Like we can just get guys later. Sky.
When should we draft our second quarterback, or does that come later?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the sweet spot has been make sure you're landing 2 top 12 guys. Also, we've projected top 12 guys almost perfectly the last 2 years. I don't know if you guys have anybody that you think is really going to break it outside the top 12 this year. I don't see it. I mean, I'm fine with Sky. Like this is a pound wide this is a pound wide receiver draft to me with our start with taking an early tight end and an early quarterback. Like to me, it's just pound tight ends in these rounds. But obviously, a guy like Clyde there, I think isn't bad. But yeah, generally the last 2 years, it's typically been if you get 2 top 12 guys without super reaching for your first quarterback, that's been a really, really good strategy. And that's typically been like in rounds 5 or 6 through 9 or 10.
Hey, we have a unique chance here too to make a cheap stack with Houston or Indy because we have Cooks and Pittman. Matt Ryan and Davis Mills are going to be going like after the 25th quarterbacks or whatever. They'll be free. We can get Mechie. He'll be cheap. Maybe Nico. I'm kind of out on Nico, but I wouldn't mind some Mechie shares and Alec Pierce potentially. So
Does Superhero suggest, TJ, we end with 2 tight ends or 3?
Tight end has kind of been all over the place. It's basically been based on your
tight end
tight end
14.
strategy. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think with if you're going with a Goddard, unless you're completing a stack, I think this is the type of draft where you're probably going to go with like your second guy is going to be in that fringe tight end 1 range and just stay with 2.
Do you guys have a early pick for this year's like Dawson Knox, the tight end that, before him, Robert Tonyan, the 60-70 target tight end and a great offense that catches 10 touchdowns? And why is it Irv Smith?
I kind of like Robert Tonyan for a bounce back.
It could be Tonyan again. I think Higbee qualifies. If Hurst is the Bengals starting tight end,
the answer is Albert O, but like everyone's drafting Albert O as like a top 10 guy.
They just drafted an tight end at 80th overall. That's a pass catcher.
No, but we know rookie tight ends don't matter. Like, we know they don't make any impact.
Dude, he can split it up. Look at, like, Pat Freiermuth last year. He fucking played half the snaps. Well, I know they don't matter. They don't matter. I'm not saying this Greg Dulcich is going to be worth a damn, but he's going to split snaps with a guy that's always split snaps in his entire career. And for what? To be Russell Wilson's number 4 pass game option? Like, all right, so at first, I wasn't buying the Russell Wilson doesn't enable tight ends thing because they've always rotated him. But maybe there is something to Russ never throwing over the middle of the field, not really having good tight ends other than Jimmy Graham, who is a wide receiver.
I like the rising tide raises all the ships theory, and I'm gonna give Gesicki one more shot this year. I'm gonna hope that passing offense has a good enough pass catching core that they can have a good year. I don't hate Gesicki. I think
Hurry, Daigle. Go Rondale. Fuck it. Oh, Gesicki.
No, I was trying to get wrong.
Oh, you don't got to listen to me. Oh, okay.
It's okay. I was listening to you.
I was just giving my take since you guys gave yours. Oh no, you knew how to take them.
We're giving again big picture takeaways. Everyone literally gets one of these every Thursday until September. They're gonna be fine. Everyone's gonna make it. It's okay.
So back to that talk about the quarterbacks. Like, we've predicted them pretty much perfectly the last 12 years. There hasn't been a slate breaker outside of the top 12. Right now, the 13th and 14th 12th, 13th, 14th, Rodgers, Stafford, Watson. Trey Lance feels kind of egregious at 11. Like, if someone's going to break it outside of the top 12, it feels like Watson. Is there anyone else out there? I know people like Carr with Devontae. Oof.
I think Carr and Cousins are way closer to Rodgers and Stafford than maybe we're.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I mean, like,
are they going to be top 5 guys?
Is there? Yeah, there isn't one, right? Outside the top 12, Watson's the only one, maybe just because he's Watson. But Cleveland is gross.
Are we going Rondale Moore?
And if he,
by the way, fried chip in. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and he's still. We don't even know how many games Watson plays, right?
Right.
That's why he's thinking. If we could guarantee 16 or 17 games, Watson would be just fine. I would imagine he's still Watson.
Yeah, if we guarantee 7 games, where does he go? Like Dak, Tom Brady range right there?
Yeah.
I put him, I think, you take Lamar or Watson if we knew we had 17 games.
I wouldn't put him with, because I still consider Lamar top first tier. Yeah. But I'd put Watson in the second tier. That's personally me.
I think it's 5. It'd be 5 and 6 or 6 and 5. It's very close.
I'd still take Russ over Watson, I think.
Russ doesn't really want run anymore, man.
Speaking of Lamar, have you guys seen what Bateman's ADP looked like in the past 2 days, and what are you doing with them?
I have not, but I also have thought Bateman is a slightly overrated prospect to begin with. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, the Ravens, everything they've done this offseason tell us that never again do they want Lamar to attempt a career-high 32 attempts per game.
I know.
They never want to be in that situation whatsoever.
And Bateman's too.
They built on defense.
Well,
they built to draft 2 tight ends.
It's the Mark Andrews show, right?
And their fourth, fourth round, they want to play jumbo packages and run the ball again. So I'm pretty much like I'm down on the passing attack overall.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of there, and he's there with the Cooks and Mooney and some of these other guys. But even then, you could argue he should be a little bit down there because I don't know if Hollywood last year had 146 targets, but I don't think Bateman's going to get there. I'd probably put the over-under, 120-ish or something like that, which isn't terrible. But, Daigle, to your point, I don't know. I know people liked him coming out. He did suffer that, I believe it was a groin injury or whatever it was, early on in the season, so he wasn't healthy. But he had the 100-yard game against Cleveland where he had a couple nice contested catches. but like I thought Kadarius Toney was like a more impressive like on film rookie. So I'm not out on Bateman by any stretch, but I don't know what we saw last year to make anyone think that he's going to be this like game changer.
Yeah, I mean, he finished, I think it was 6.8 or 6.9 targets per game, which was actually surprising when I looked at it. So, I mean, if he increases that by 1, it's 136 targets. But to your guys' point, like, it kind of feels like they're going to go back to, 2020, 2019 Lamar, where they are the lowest passing volume team in the league.
They have their running backs again. I mean,
Think about how many things had to go wrong, including their defense, like every starter basically getting injured, for them to become a pass-heavy team. Like, that's not happening again.
And they were like the quintessential Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews for those 2 years, where it's like their target share isn't equating to volume. They were like 27% target share, equating to like 6.5 targets per game. It was crazy.
Yeah. And I also don't
that's the thing
think
with target. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Daigle.
No, I was just gonna say I don't think you drop. I think everyone also sees like Bateman, you drop him in place of Marquise Brown. What they do, like both can be good players, but they're not the same player.
No.
Marquise Brown, you do drop in place of Christian Kirk, and arguably he's better than Christian Kirk. But like Bateman, not the case at all. That's what I worry about.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. What the hell was I just gonna say? We were talking about. I forget it. Never mind.
We're on the clock. It's okay. So we are still going strong on our superhero RB build. 2 at the top.
Bell just went.
Remember, Saquon Barkley is just nitpicking. Really, you want to start with 2 strong running backs. That's what we're doing.
I would like to come out of this turn with
wide
a second.
receivers, or
I would go with Shab White here and hope that Fournette gets hurt, and he takes over as a 3-down running back.
And are we still only sitting on
or wide receiver?
I like that.
White.
Idea.
White. Fuck.
We got him. I think we got him, right? Yeah, we got him.
And we're still only sitting on Hurts.
Yes, we're still only sitting on 1 QB, which is also why I put Matt Ryan there, because we do have a sneaky Colt stack going if we want to back up. Yeah. Matt Ryan maybe sneaks in as like the QB 12. Maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say if we leave this turn without a quarterback, it could be pretty gross coming back.
So we can make it this one. That's okay with this one.
If we can't get Ryan, we can definitely get Davis Mills. I know there are some whispers about Houston with Baker or Jimmy. I don't know.
My Daniel Jones argument is for another day. I don't mind taking Matt Ryan.
I mean, I think if you don't have Pittman here, it's easier. But it's like, why not, right?
I think, because we can also get our third tight end can be a Colts tight end. We can just take a chance.
Yeah. What's the? You've brought up Davis Mills twice, Ian. What do you want to talk about? What's on your mind?
He's just there. I mean, look, he had the one stat I got is only Mac Jones had more top 12 performances among rookie QB. He was tied with. Dude, Davis Mills was the second best rookie quarterback last year, and okay, I'm not saying he's going to be in 3 years the second best from that class, but. I don't know. We can't just write the dude off. He made it through the draft without Houston selecting one. Like, low-key, end of the quarterback winners were Davis Mills, Jared Goff, and probably not even Drew Lock because he's in this competition with Geno Smith. But Jared Goff and Davis Mills, like, no one would have been surprised if the Texans or Lions took a quarterback, and they didn't. So unless we really think a trade's going to happen at the end of the draft like this, like, we should be taking them over, like, Mariota or Trubisky or these other guys who could lose their job at any point.
So my counter to that would be can we just never take a quarterback this late and never take any Texans?
Very reasonable. Very very fair rebuttal.
Although Ian was right. Ian was screaming about Brandon Cooks last year. I was screaming against him, and I was the one who was wrong. And so, like, it's the same situation as last year, and I don't want to be wrong on Brandon Cooks again. So I don't mind getting Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
But everyone else, like the tight end, the quarterback, even Davis Mills, the running back situation, I don't give a shit about. I do not care about Dameon Pierce at all. Do not care at all.
So Ian's point about like just taking one of those quarterbacks at the end of the draft reminds me about his question earlier about like who that Dawson Knox player is this year. So one thing that was super interesting in the data last year, and again, it only showed up last year. It was egregious the year before. You basically have to have like such a perfect roster otherwise to execute this. But last year, 4 late round tight ends, although utilized barely at all, actually had a very strong advance rate. That had a lot to do with a couple of those late round guys hitting. I don't remember who else really hit late besides Dawson Knox, but a couple guys did have like decent stretches over the last
Everett
5 or 6 games.
Everett was okay in the second half.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just something interesting to think. Like if you, and it's I think you should only do it if you completely smash your other positions. If you're like a, two strong quarterbacks, like a superhero RB build, and just focus on wide receivers everywhere else. I think it's something you could have in your back pocket if things get super ugly at tight end. Obviously, we're not doing it with this team, but it was worth noting that like that four tight. But again, going back to 400,000 entries, 400,000 plus entries, trying to be a little bit unique. Four late tight ends somehow worked. Again, it was used in like 0.1% of teams, but interesting.
That's the point. You mean
exactly.
You're looking for contrarian builds. And
Yeah.
real quick on Gerald Everett, I forgot to mention him earlier with that potential group. Chargers gave him like a 2-year, $13 million deal. I mean, Jared Cook last year was making a fraction of that, and he still saw like 83 targets on the ceiling. Was washed beyond wash, but the Chargers were one of those teams that I kind of wrote off week to week because they were using Cook, Donald Parham, and even Steven Anderson. And I was just like, 3 tight ends, what's going to happen? But Cook would keep like busting on these, actually having a solid amount of targets. So Gerald Everett's someone we've liked, and would it shock any of us if Herbert turns in 45 touchdowns and MVP? No.
I kind of hate that there are so many good late round tight ends because we say it every year. But I'm not kidding. Genuinely, like there's a lot of talented players, most importantly, that are going to run a fuck ton of routes in the later rounds this year. That's usually never been the case. But this year, you can even say like Hayden Hurst if you want to do that shit again. But like Austin Hooper as well for the Titans. Yeah. We've already mentioned Irv Smith, Robert Tonyan bounced back, Mo Ellie Cox, who we're going to get for this stack.
Ricky Seals-Jones.
Sure. Gerald Everett. Like the list goes on and on and on. So like I do actually think this is the year for 4 tight end builds and just grab all the shitty players. Just get them all.
Yeah, and because the likelihood.
Is it okay for the strategy to start putting more RBs on this build?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Well, we're under.
And then how many really are we targeting? Yeah,
we're
already around 14.
2 more.
Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah.
People just don't want Gus Edwards to be a thing, and he's going to have like probably going to average like 11 or 12 carries per game. Finishes like the RB 35 or something.
You can.
I mean, I was going to say, like, when him and Lamar are on the field, if they're running the offense like we think they're going to run it, it's a coin flip who's getting the touchdown between him and Lamar, basically. I mean, obviously Mark Andrews if they're throwing, but that's how it's going to work.
Everyone
is better, but
everyone can literally go to their research and whatever they wrote in their rankings before Gus Edwards got injured 2 years ago and just copy and paste it over to this year because it's the same argument. J.K. Dobbins is yet again being overdrafted. Okay, so we have 6 wide receivers. We'll get our tight end late.
Herbert's a nice handcuff if we want him.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think we need a third tight end.
Who is, Ian?
Herbert. Khalil Herbert.
Oh, okay. No, I like Khalil Herbert. That's fine.
Yeah, if we're shooting for the stars, like that's why I like Rachaad White too. I have them in the same tier with like Alexander Madison. Maybe you get nothing, or maybe you legit have like an RB1.
As DKB mentions, Hayden must have died. He's not coming back, so that's a damn shame. But that's why we also drafted Khalil Herbert in his honor because he loves Khalil Herbert. If only for the offense change and schemes that doesn't guarantee David Montgomery to be a workload. Also, this is going to be such a shitty offense. Like this Bears roster post-draft is the most disastrous on paper, at least on the offensive side of the ball.
These tweets like, oh, the Bears have signed the most wide receivers out of the undrafted wide receivers. Like, look at all of them. Look at all of them. I think it was Timo from PFF. Like, my God, no excuses now. Justin Fields.
Who's our wide receiver one?
Our wide receiver one is AJ with our stack. This needs 8 wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't think. I think you could.
This may need 9 wide receivers.
Yeah, I would say you could argue. You can. I would argue you close us out with 3 wide receivers.
And be fine. I'm actually fine with these 2 tight ends. That's fine. Yeah. Goddard, Jasicki, especially since we spent high draft capital on Goddard, so. Hey, we can pretend like he is the tight end one.
Unless there's someone we love. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's horrible. But I like.
We expect 17 games. out of Hurts and Ryan, like barring injury, no big deal.
I think the handcuff running backs are gone. I think everyone remaining is like a committee early down or pass down guy that probably doesn't have a chance to fully take over. Even Jamal Williams last year, like when Swift got hurt, they just kept using other dudes in there, unfortunately. Williams was a little bit banged up himself, but I don't think there's a ceiling there for him. So that's why, guys, like honestly, these Patriots running backs, I'm publishing my rankings tomorrow. I originally put like Damon Harris or Ramondre Stevenson like outside the top 50. I was just like, I don't want them no matter what. I calmed down a little bit, but I have Damon Harris like RB 38 or something. What's the upside? Last year he scored 15 touchdowns and he was the RB 20 per game. They're never going to throw him the ball. Stevenson's there. Pierre Strong is there. James White's there. Ty Montgomery is there. Kevin freaking Harris is there. Like LeGarrette Blount, we say, what happens if they do the LeGarrette Blount thing? He was the RB 15 per game that year. Like, it's a weird game. Half points a little different, but not much, man. Like, just don't draft him. Just don't do it.
LeGarrette Blount was also based on touchdowns like Harris was too last year.
Right. Like, there's not a ceiling to chase.
We literally have 2 decades of evidence under Bill Belichick that you will never touch the field for your weakness. You will only play when it's your strength. And Damian Harris will never catch passes. He will never allow him to, even when James White went down. Even it's only a 2-game sample. I don't like dealing with a small sample, but James White even 6.5 targets, 14 fantasy points per game in the 2 games he played with Mac Jones. Like James White's going to be used in that third down option. That is the most valuable, in my opinion, in the later rounds of best ball leagues, a la James Cook. And so that's why I still like James White.
I do too. I don't
for
like
0 RB.
We just had that news break that like he's kind of questionable for training camps. Let's make sure he's going to be recovering. Okay, but no, Daigle, you're right. He was balling last year, and when I was going back year by year, seeing who the productive Patriots running backs were in full PPR scoring, it's James White. Like he was the RB8 in like the last Brady year there. Like it doesn't make sense, and you know when. It's like running backs, like just like quarterbacks when they're compared in like television, they never show the rushing stats. And for running backs, they never show the receiving stats. And that helps James White.
All right, here's our chance to pound stacks. I'm looking with Robbie Anderson, even though I expect to make a trade, it doesn't matter. Christian McCaffrey, Robbie Anderson, perhaps.
I'm cool with that.
Cedric Wilson. We have Mike Gesicki as well.
Robbie was the wide receiver 22 years ago. Like, I don't know.
TJ, any thoughts?
No.
It's gonna come back. So.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just affected because I remember that week that Leone steamed Robbie Anderson, who's a shitty player or shitty play that week in DFS, to 13%, and I just had him in single entries, and I'm like, how the fuck did Robbie Anderson become 13% when I expected to play him at 3%? Like fucking Leone.
That sounds about right.
Scroll down wide receiver. Scroll down at wide receiver.
Okay. This is what we're dealing with right now. Hey, Devin Duvernay is actually a great play.
Duvernay?
He's their wide receiver 2 immediately.
I'm cool with Duvernay. I see Josh Norris is hanging his hat on Terrence Marshall as the late round guy. Wouldn't be a bad play.
We already got Robbie though. Like we can't do it again.
Yeah.
We can't double dip on Carolina receivers.
But we're kind of guaranteeing the Panthers wide receiver 2 at that point, and it's not like we're handcuffing our first round pick, you know. But
TJ, I'm listening to you, TJ. Any thoughts?
I'm scrolling there here, and it's pretty
Cedric,
ugly.
Jesus Christ, Devin Duvernay.
I kind of like Duvernay too. Yeah,
Devin Duvernay.
I'm
making executive decision to get Devin Duvernay.
Well, real quick, only because Wilson popped up. TJ, my only problem with Gesicki is like, there's going to be an odd man out there. There's Tyreek, there's Waddle. They just paid Cedric $18 million, and they re-signed Durham Smythe, who was their inline tight end.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I rant about this a lot. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like Gesicki does not really play tight end for them. It's a new offense. He is really good. I'm just not sure he's going to be on the field.
I mean, if you don't think he's going to be on the field with them, I mean that makes sense. It feels like he is. I would think he would kind of be their. I know they paid Cedric, but their de facto wide receiver 3 and 3 in those kind of sets. Yeah.
Maybe they just overpaid Cedric. That would be great.
DKB also living for Hayden Winks because the Underdog Show basically the Underdog Show hates Gerald Everett, the player. They think he's just an awful player.
He had the worst game. He probably had the single worst game of 2021 when he like fumbled and like I think he fumbled twice and he like dropped a pass that turned into an interception. It was horrendous.
He is still an elite athlete. He's just a player you can't watch. Don't watch the game.
I've written a horrendous article before. I would hope I'm not judged on that. You know.
And for me, Mike Gesicki was the tight end 14, I believe, in fantasy points per game. And like, I feel like his targets definitely did not increase from last year to this year. And that's my concern.
Maybe the
Tight end
upside of
14
the offense with Tyreek, but that's kind of my thing with Tua too. It's just we haven't even seen that. Jalen Hurts we've seen a ceiling with, and if you add AJB to that, maybe we do get a legit top 5, sort of season in fantasy land. But like with Tua, dude, even going back to Alabama, Tua has never run for 50 yards in a game. Like you just need him to like contend. You need him to be like a Cousins, Derek Carr guy. And then as we talked about before, like what's even the ceiling of that group at this point? So,
Boy,
Yeah,
we're in
with these-
Haskins range.
Yeah, I was just gonna say with these last round picks, I think that like if you're talking about how to get unique in a big tournament, I think one of the easiest things to do is like what passing offenses do you think are going to be really good, and taking just some really deep dart throws, like not even guys that we necessarily that are going to start the season on the field but might need injuries or something like that. So he probably already went, but like Jalen Guyton types, like just guys that we don't.
AJ
expect.
Green's going to start in Arizona. I'm sorry, it's gross.
No, can't do it again.
Just no.
I cannot, because like he was only
But
usable. He wasn't good.
Take
That's
James
what I'm saying.
Washington then. Like,
I think James Washington's a good player in a good offense, or in an offense that needs to throw the ball.
I agree. I don't think he's bad.
I think James Washington's a very good best ball player.
He's had to catch passes from Mason Rudolph for like the last 10 years. Give the guy a damn break.
And Rossberger. More importantly, Rossberger.
All right, Underdog fix this. Can we look at the board immediately now?
I think I just need to refresh real quick.
Because I've done some streams on my podcast, and I sit around
TJ.
refreshing this for like 5 minutes like an idiot.
TJ, we're more honest than we are kind. So that's what we're going to do every Thursday.
There we go.
Here we go. All you got to do is
Hell yeah.
refresh, and that fixes it. No big deal.
God, I'm such a fucking idiot.
So this is what we do. Let's go ahead and review, and then we can skip to any teams as well. But let's start with ours. Obviously, we wanted to start wide receiver at 2, but was there really any repercussion, TJ, in starting 2 running backs, since that's what we were going to do anyhow at the turn since we were so early, right? Like, we would have grabbed maybe Mike Evans there, and then instead gone, I don't know, maybe even still Saquon or Leonard Fournette. Or, Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to hold where Josh Allen's going 2-3. I would be, if I wanted one of those receivers there, I think I'd be pretty surprised if I had one of them higher. I'm surprised that AJ made it there. I thought for sure he wouldn't, but Josh Allen going there is surprising to me. I mean, that's why it could be tough to pull off like superhero from the front. I don't think it's a slam dunk with the guys that are, at least right now, that are going.
TJ, can we call superhero 2 of the first 3? You're the philosopher here, so I don't want to put words in your idea.
Yeah, I mean,
reasonable.
I filtered it for content purposes, for 2 in the first 2, just because the advance rates for the past 2 years of running backs in rounds 3 through 6 did drop off pretty far. So I mean, I would say it just depends how committed you want to be to it. Again, it's a theory, right? So if you're going to hope that 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds hit perfectly, and you stay with that concept of just loading up on all the other positions till say round 10, I think it's a pretty sound strategy.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to do that moving forward.
And it's a lot of interesting arguments. Then we came back with Michael Pittman, who I still believe his ADP will rise even further from this. Like, I think he's going to be in the 3rd round, so I don't mind still grabbing him right here. Jalen Hurts, we all believe also, even though we had A.J. Brown, it may be a little too early for quarterback, but we would not have gotten him at 71, and we expect his ADP as well to increase. So that's why we grabbed him too. No big deal. But from that point forward, I think maybe the question is, it did complete our stack. But again, do you draft tight end this early, or do you wait, TJ? Or is there no like stiff answer? It's more about being pragmatic.
Yeah, I think, again, like I said at the top, ebbs and flows to your draft. I'm typically not going to be drafting. I'm probably waiting till the next turn for me to get my quarterbacks. I'm probably waiting all the way for the next turn, at least for my first tight end, if I don't get an early one. But for these reasons, we can do this mega stack basically. I don't think it's horrible. It's not something I'm going to end up doing in a lot of my drafts. I think you're just kind of like doubling down on strategies that have not been necessarily ideal, which I don't want to do a ton. But again, I mean, one of the worst roster constructions in the first year of it ended up being the championship build, right? So we can't just base it on that one single variable.
And last year's the build was in June, so who knows what's going to happen?
Exactly.
Weird shit happens. We've been talking about DFS
Yeah.
too. We all remember when the Bears fan rostered like 5 or 6 of them and just took it home.
Yeah.
Mitch Trubisky 6 touchdowns against the Buccaneers. What a Sunday!
Awesome winning the Millie in what was it, week 16, with a Seahawks onslaught in Chicago. No one else had it, and then played the chalk around the 6 players he had from that game. It was brilliant. It was brilliant strategy. I was like proud of him more than anything.
Yeah.
I wish I could have been there for like to hear Alex's like stupid fucking laugh as he was like putting together that $1 million lineup.
But also,
I love his laugh. But come on, like I love that dude.
But also, he showed it. He showed it on Twitter that evening. Is that it's Osmo, of course, the pro DFS player. He's played the Millie so much, he was still down. Like I think he was still down 300K from Millie entries altogether because that's how often he plays it. So he was just happened to be the one who hadn't hit it yet, but then he hit it, so it's okay.
No way, Daigle, only show the wins in life. No one cares about the
I was told if everybody had 150 entries, they would always win. That's what I was told.
Well, you also, like all of us, were lied to. Okay, so again, these 2 wide receivers are more about big picture in that we wanted to draft wide receiver. We couldn't decide, so we just ended up being auto-drafted. But we still wanted to keep on stacking wide receivers. Do you think that was a mistake, or would you had rather have like one of these quarterback 2s, for instance, another running back? How would you have played it, TJ?
I think after I have my drafting legs under me, I think I probably would have opted for my second quarterback to have a really strong quarterback co.
Yeah.
Like I don't love the idea of waiting that long for my QB2. I'm trying to get 2 guys that have like, legit league winning upside. And I think that's every quarterback in 1 through, 12 or 13 can have at least those league winning weeks and be have really big weeks. Again, we're not going to know the week 16, 17 schedule for another week, but looking at things like that, I think I'd probably come out of that turn with that one quarterback.
I definitely think I would have taken Aaron Rodgers at 95 instead. That's what I would have done. And then we know his wide receivers are going so late, whether you stack them with Randall Cobb, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Robert Tonyan, no matter what you decide, I think it's actually a pretty good stack to still have right now at value. So I like that a lot. Ian, Mike Gesicki, would that have been your tight end 2, or would you have waited instead of that and maybe just tacked on 2 more at the end and like a pile up as your backup?
I mean, I would have preferred Gronk straight up over him. I believe
was Gronk there.
Yeah,
Gronk was there.
His ADP is out of whack. No, like, I wasn't. But like when we were talking about that, it was like 5 seconds left.
30-second clock is hard. Yeah,
I had to put out like not Mike Gesicki. Like it wasn't necessarily that I'm out on him completely, but based on that, so that's all. And honestly, Ertz went before him, so we got to get our second good one. I think a lot of maybe what we were talking about with the quarterback wise, if we're not getting if we're not devoting to a Travis Kelce, Kittle, Waller type, like we probably do want to try to get a second tight end in that top, 13, 14 that we're feeling extra good about. So Gesicki's not too far off that. I think it's I think that round spot's about okay. The early research I was doing with Dwayne McFarland, always on the PFF Fantasy Pod with myself, like that round 7 through 10 range, based on what you do in rounds 1 through 6, before the draft especially, was really important because you could get guys like Gronk and like before the Brady retirement, like you still have in the round 7 through 10 range enough viable options at like every position to kind of make up for any like roster construction issues you may have had in the first spot. So it worked out, but if we could have gotten Gronk there, man,
yeah.
Because could the tight end like fill in our flex even? Because like Gronk is, if he's playing, if we know that for sure, I mean he's like tight end 6.
Well, that's the issue right now is that we don't. Yeah, we would have had you still. Maybe at this point in a million tournament, you don't draft a third tight end and hope Gronk is your second. Like that's one of those strategic tournament situations you find yourself in.
Well, and I think that's like why 3 quarterback has been so much worse than 2 quarterbacks, but something like 4 tight end works. Like at the very least, if you have an extra tight end instead of an extra quarterback, you can fill in your flex some weeks, right? You're not getting that with your quarterback.
Yeah,
So I think that's overlooked too.
Also,
real
that
quick
was like
sorry, Dave. I was going to say the one guy going right around here I'm looking at, Pat Fryermuth. Like, this is a problem for me that I still have not heard a good answer to. He got outsnapped and ran fewer routes than Zach Gentry in their playoff game last year. I have no idea why. I have no idea how. But the fact that we're just like gifting Fryermuth this top 10, top 12, 15 ADP with Kenny Pickett or Trubisky under center is outrageous to me. Like all these guys around him. I don't like Albert O, but I think I take Albert O over Fryermuth at this point.
If it's any consolation, I faded all the Fryermuth chalk weeks last year, if that makes you feel any better.
those 40-yard touchdown weeks. Yeah, that somehow he still got there because they never increased his fucking salary.
Yeah.
Then we went Rondo more, and then basically from there began filling out QB2. We only drafted 2 quarterbacks, and then our running backs at the end. We only ended up with 5, but we got Rachaad White, Gus Edwards, Khalil Herbert. A micro question, Ian, but I think it's very curious right now because I personally did not adjust Leonard Fournette for Rachaad White. I still think Leonard Fournette's a top 10 running back personally. Do you discount Fournette because of Rachaad White's presence?
Not at all. I have Fournette, I think, RB6 or 7. Like it's
Yeah.
high enough where you got to take a step back. It's like, okay, am I prepared to deal with the backlash on social media, like after other people see what I'm about to do?
Well, that shouldn't affect where your rankings are.
I know. But no, but with Rachaad White, dude, you can do it all. And like I like to watch all these guys play in the preseason before having super. I like to defer to the Graham Barfields of the world, like the guys I think really know like what these position talent evaluations are. But Rachaad White, I mean, when I went through all these running backs just to see who could like catch the ball and like not be a liability in pass protection, to see who theoretically can be a 3-down back, he was fine, man. He was like top 6 in PFF rushing and receiving grade alike. And for him to get day 2 draft capital, like he's a replacement for Ronald Jones. And no, I don't think Fournette's gonna be hindered by it, but at the same time, he's with the Madisons and Khalil Herberts, where it is a new offense. Maybe he does actually have a Tony Pollard-esque standalone role, and I think he does have that similar handcuff upside. So, like, I don't want Pollard and Dillon because of how early they're going in that like mid RB3 range, but a couple rounds later, when you can get the Rachaad Whites, the Khalil Herberts of the world, I think there's a best case scenario in a tournament like this where they work as an RB1 when, like, dude, if Fournette gets hurt, it's not going to be Giovanni Bernard that steps up. It's going to be Rachaad White.
You know what? There are a fair amount of teams that have been quite successful, which I don't have the ADPs. I guess they're not close, but there are a lot of successful underdog teams that have drafted more than one running back from the same team, which obviously flies in the face of all of our handcuff discussions. But I'm guessing those teams were handcuff teams. They were players that drafted 2 players with standalone roles.
You already mentioned as well, and we all agreed, a quarterback 2 through in the 7th, 9th round to get a strong quarterback 2. We waited. We got Matt Ryan. I still think Matt Ryan's a good option if you wait, but we also had Michael Pittman, so it made so much sense. Just wait, and then we sat on it. And then beyond that, just kept on filling out with wide receivers that went late, either with stack options or were not drafted. And like you said, TJ, you still think one of your most important points is making sure that your last pick is one that differentiates but also has opportunity.
Yeah, and for me, opportunity isn't like necessarily getting on the field. Like you made the AJ Green comment, and whether it's AJ Green or whoever you think, like a guy you pick in the 18th round that is going to get you 4 to 5 points a game, that's basically 0 points a game because he's never going to contribute to your rosters. So I'd rather take whoever the wide receiver 5 is on the Chiefs that doesn't have an ADP and hope he just for some reason in the last 3 weeks of the season he's playing on the Chiefs offense rather than playing than taking whoever Seattle's 3rd wide receiver is because he's going to play 50% of the snaps. Like, I don't care.
Daigle, just for me, did Auden Tate get drafted?
After Drake London, I can't imagine. No, he did not. 215. That's your guy to draft in the 18th round, Ian. Auden Tate's right there in the 18th round.
Hey, no one can argue with this. No one can argue with this. The tallest top 2 wide receivers in the NFL play for the Atlanta Falcons.
You're right. Those are facts. Ian, tell everyone what you have coming out of Pro Football Focus this week.
Taking a little bit of a lull, but hooked you all up beforehand. Got pods off on Monday and Tuesday, breaking down every single team, NFC, AFC, about 4 hours of content with myself and Dwayne The Rock McFarland. And if you are savage enough to enjoy the live football that is gracing our televisions in the middle of May, check out all my USFL content there as well. But great to be here. TJ, thanks for joining us, man. Hope it's not the last time. And
no, I'm in these best ball streets, baby.
Let's go, baby. So Daigle, first of many this summer. I apologize. The food poisoning got me down last time, but we're back. And you know what? Now Hayden lost one too, so I'm no longer apologetic for any of that shit.
Think about your life and stop eating 7-Eleven chicken wings while TJ tells us what comes out for him this week.
If you've been on 4for4, you know we've already released tools for roster construction and advance rates for this very tournament. The last 2 years of Underdog, I've used that to write articles on positional allocation, roster construction, positional draft strategies that we talked about in this podcast. Those are up on the site. Still coming with stacking, how to build a unique roster, and then just an overall, we call it the strategy article at 4for4. Just if you draft this way, this is exactly what I'm going to be doing in all of my Underdog drafts. So make sure you check that on 4for4. And if you need a break from football, check out the 4for Formula One podcast. We're getting into the F1 DFS. We teamed up with Justin Freeman, and we've actually been doing quite well. So I highly suggest you check that out. Miami Grand Prix this week.
I also do the USFL DFS show with Justin Freeman every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern because I still love doing the USFL DFS shows and playing, but I would prefer it not be a wild card and they get their injury reports correct. Nonetheless, yes, I'm still in those wildcat streets with all the other touts, so no big deal.
Thank you, Daigle. Thank you.
And I hope you're not tired of football content just yet, because at 4for4 next week, we not only have all the stuff TJ told you about, but also my best ball tiers come out. Also, we're going to be starting doing some more exploiting default ADPs with the drafters best ball tournament, underdog best ball tournament, other stuff. So lots of stuff coming out. TJ, I should probably ask you after the show, but also, do you want to come on the Most Accurate podcast next week? Talk about the best ball walkthrough guide.
I'm in.
There you go. That's how we plan here at 4for4. So thank you everyone for joining.
I feel hurt,
again,
but whatever.
Ian, you're coming on definitely in a couple weeks. Don't worry. You're going to get asked soon. We will be back as always for the rest of the summer. Every Thursday, it's the best ball happy hour at 6 p.m. Eastern. Maybe some more guests. Maybe Hayden's alive. We're going to find out next week. See you then.